Hello, company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft. Covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keates. I'm a director and your host. Today's guest started his career as a receptionist for Cameron Mackintosh and has gone on to be a director, international producer, and now holds the title of artistic director of Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Other Palace. He's brought back repertory theatre to producing smash hits, including In the Heights, Carrie, Sideshow, and is preparing for a production of Heathers. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Paul Taylor-Mills.
What an introduction.
Only the best for you, my dear. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Coming up on today's show, on the Soapbox, Paul Taylor-Mills and I will be discussing responsible use of your social media. I'll be getting my theatrical tips out of things to see this June 2018. On the platform, we have music from Tim Dreesen's new musical, Just a Normal Girl, and I'll be interviewing Paul Taylor-Mills all about his life, career, and setting him some infamous Show People podcast challenges too. You're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates and Paul Taylor-Mills. So welcome to the show, love.
Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Before we get going and talk about all of the Other Palace things, I was so proud and so happy to see you running in what looked like the hottest conditions in the London Marathon, collapsing onto Aaron Rodgers almost, and you made it right to the end. Congratulations.
Thank you. Never again. And everybody thinks I'm joking when I say that, but I really, really mean it to everybody listening. Never, never again. It was a third marathon, and I promised myself last year I was never going to do it. And then when you have a charity call you, it's very, very difficult to say no to a charity, or at least I found it really, really difficult to say no. But of course, it was the hottest marathon on record. Everybody did their training in the snow and the rain, and then for the actual day to come and it be like tropical was just it was horrific. And it was a bit like the Hunger Games, because you get to mile 14 and then you just see people dropping, and your instinct is to, as a kind of decent human being, is to stop and help that person, but they advise you just to keep going. So it's absolutely savage. But I've raised thousands for the Terence Higgins Trust. I'm really, really happy. But yeah, I turned 30 last year. My body just can't handle it anymore.
Oh, well, just huge congratulations. And to raise such a huge amount of money for a charity that's very close to my heart. Just good for you. And the awareness that would have caused as well. So before we delve into theatrical depravity and your life and career, etc., other than obviously marathons and running the Other Palace, what else has been happening in your life?
Oh gosh, that's about it. I think my life's really, really sad because it is just theatre. I like to travel. I like to travel a lot.
Any nice holidays coming up?
I'm having a big gay holiday in June, only for a weekend. We're going to now I keep pronouncing this wrong. It's Sitges? Sitges. Yeah. I'm so excited. We're going for the Pride Festival. I've never been to a Pride.
Not even a London Pride?
Not really. No, I've kind of walked through it. No, isn't that horrific?
Yeah, I mean, you're quite openly out on social media.
I am very openly out.
Well, hang on a sec. Until, of course, you're papped with Caroline Flack.
Of course.
New boyfriend of Caroline Flack.
Yeah, the Daily Mail there being responsible as ever. Yeah, that was hilarious.
More importantly, obviously you've got Heathers that's just about to come to the Other Palace. For those who don't know anything about the show, just give a little rundown as to who wrote it and what's it about.
So Heathers, and I did a quiz last week, so I know the year it was the film was written, and I didn't at the time. It's kind of become a culty film that came out in 1988. And had a life as a kind of a bit of an indie film. It's set in a high school in America. Starred a young Winona Ryder. And the original musical started life in LA in a workshop format. Then it went to Joe's Pub, the Public Theatre. And then it had a brief life running at the New World Stages in New York. And I came across it, I believe it was about 5 years ago, and just fell in love with it. But I did feel at the time that perhaps it wasn't cooked yet. And I stayed in touch with the writers, and we talked about, doing something with it in London, or at least the UK at least. And I know lots of people wanted to do the show. And
everybody wanted to do it, Paul. Let's just be honest.
I think, they had quite a lot of people that showed an interest. And I guess I thought it's never going to come my way, because my thoughts about the show were quite controversial, in that I thought it needed work still. And then when The Other Palace came along, and I was set with this mission to develop and workshop new musicals, I approached Larry, who I'd known from when I did Bat Boy, Southern Playhouse a few years ago. And I said, listen, I really, really want to do this, but I think it needs a few nips and tucks, and it needs a play. And when I approached them, I thought they were going to tell me to go away and bugger off. And they didn't. It was kind of met with open arms, and they said, well, listen, we always wanted to have extra time on it, but, working in New York, the budget constraints are such that your only really objective is to get version A of the show ready. So you don't have time to play with what version B or C might be. So we workshopped it at the Other Palace last year for a week, and had a very, very wonderful cast. And it was so popular. And it was hard communicating to people. This was just a workshop. And we rewrote songs. We changed moments in a really dramatic way in some places. And we used audience feedback. So essentially we have an app that we ask audience questions. And the questions are quite broad. It's, did you like this song? Does this moment resonate? Does that character resonate? And it was hugely, hugely valuable, because you get a very objective idea of the work, whether it's working. And then it's taken us a couple of months to kind of get our ducks in a row, and for me to find the right partners. And it's the first time that Bill Kenwright and I are working together again since Carrie. And yes, we open on the 9th of June.
For anybody who doesn't use Twitter or doesn't necessarily follow Paul or the other Palace, what I found absolutely amazing was it within 24 hours of it being announced, most of the tickets had been sold, and even your website crashed due to the demand that it was receiving from people wanting tickets.
Yeah, people thought it was a publicity stunt, and it definitely wasn't.
Really? How stupid are people that... I've never met a producer in my life that went, do you know what we should do? Close down the opportunity to make some money.
Exactly. It's hilarious. No, we don't use the word crashed. We use the word stumbled, because that's a more polite way of saying the box office didn't work at the time.
Yeah.
But essentially, there was just too much. We weren't anticipating the kind of traffic that the website received. And everybody was trying to get tickets at the same time at 10 a.m. on that Friday morning. And I think it was Carrie's fan base, which is massive. I think
this is Carrie Hope Fletcher.
Carrie Hope Fletcher, who's playing Veronica for us. The curiosity around the title, hopefully the heat that the workshop caused last year. And I think that jigsaw together has excited audiences. And I'm so thrilled. It smashed every box office record at the Other Palace, or indeed at the St. James, which was the former name of the theatre. So I'm so relieved, because you spend kind of all your time and trying to get something to happen, and sometimes you lose sense as to what it is you're actually dealing with. And as producers, you have an instinct, and that's really the only currency you have, your instinct on whether an idea is good or not. But you never really know if it's going to work or not. And so I was thrilled, because it means I have one less thing to worry about. And really, my priority now is just making the show as brilliant as it can be, as opposed to worrying about, oh no, are we going to sell any tickets?
And just so listeners have an idea, so this is an in-house production. This is the Other Palace production.
No, so it's a bit misleading. The Other Palace isn't really a producer.
Right.
What the Other Palace is really, really keen on doing is actually supporting projects that are at the seed stage. So that might be through giving time in one of the spaces, or supporting people by introducing them to other writers or other producers. Or sometimes we do work in progresses where we'll fund for a project to have a week in the studio to play. We do lots of different initiatives. This production particularly is produced via me, with my producer hat on, not with my artistic director of the Other Palace hat on, in a co-production between Bill Kenwright and I.
I see. Yeah. And with that, will the success of this production feed into then ultimately other things that you're doing at the Other Palace, or will that just come back to you guys as commercial producers?
I hope so. We've got this hybrid program, I call it. So the theatre is in the middle of Westminster. It's literally next to the garden of Buckingham Palace. It's an expensive building to run, and we've resourced it properly. So hopefully when an audience member comes to the other palace, it's a nice experience. When I first took over the building over a year ago, I said to the bar staff, the ushers, the tech crew, it should feel like an Italian family, like they're the best hosts in the world. And so we've spent a lot of time making sure that the customer experience is a really good one. And as such, we pay everybody. It's expensive. And so we have to do some might call it more commercial shows. And by that, I mean, currently we have Kathleen Turner, we have Heathers, we had Big Fish with ATG at Christmas. And that kind of takes care of the fact that we are a business. And then at the same time, in the studio, we've given away, since I've been there, hours and hours and hours of free space to emerging writers, people with an idea that just want to play. And that's the stuff that, we can do very easily. And I always think, when you and I first met each other, which was more years ago than we care to remember.
You're looking younger. That's what I can't understand.
Stop it. I think about what might have been really useful for us at that point in our life.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not necessarily someone to write you a check and go and just spend all this money. Just having the vote of confidence as someone in letting you use their theatre or letting you use the space. And so I'm really, really keen that, if someone reaches out to me via myself or the other palace, and we can support them just by giving them space or just by introducing them to someone at Mercury Musical, someone at Perfect Pitch, all these new writing development homes, then actually that's something really simple we can do. And that's the difference sometimes between inspiring someone when they feel like every door's been closed and a show happening or not happening.
So, Paul, for people who are listening to this, say you're a writer to begin with, what process can they go through to reach out to you or the organisation, and what kind of opportunities can they enjoy thanks to everything you're doing, and what process do they have to go through to get those?
Oh, God, that's a big question. I think it starts with, what are you writing about? That's the biggest one for me. I'm in a fortunate position. I get to listen to so much and see so much. For me, this is very, very sweeping, and I hope this doesn't get taken out of context, but I'm finding when I'm listening to things, sometimes the craft of the work, so the musicianship and the people involved, are really, really exciting, really interesting, well crafted. But then the marriage with the subject matter isn't quite right. For me, sometimes the subject matter just hasn't got any meat, or I'm struggling to find the relevance to 2018. Now, I say all this with a complete open mind, because I have to have an open mind, because I use, my current boss, Andrew Lloyd as an example. On paper, something like Starlight Express or Cats sounds like it shouldn't work.
Well, everyone said they wouldn't.
Exactly. And it's through, I guess, everyone involved around the Times determination that it happened, and they went on to become the mega hits that they are.
But this is, I don't know if you remember when the producers first hit. There was in the producers program at Drury Lane, they had a list of all of the world's most successful musicals versus all of the least successful. And you read the list of all the obvious things that should be hits, all flops.
Yeah.
The other side, a deformed figure within an opera building kidnaps a soprano and tortures people, hit.
Yeah.
The French People's Revolution, everybody dies, Les Mis, hit. Like, it's sort of, woman disguises herself as boy to study Hebrew, hit. Like, it's sort of like...
There's kind of no rhyme or reason. I think that's the exciting part of theatre, because I think if there was, then we'd have all retired and been on our yacht by now, wouldn't we? But just to go back to your question about how someone reaches out to us.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it as accessible as possible, but I mean truly accessible, so that anybody could essentially send in some work. And this goes back to, I guess, my experience of trying to get people to take me seriously. Sometimes there were so many hoops to jump through.
Just to get an email.
Just to get an email is really, really hard. I've got a trick on how to get emails for artistic directors that I always pass on. I'll do that in a minute.
Is it something at whatever the thing is, .co.uk or .org.uk?
I'll do it now. So the way, and I think Daniel Evans was the person that taught me this, but sometimes it's really, really difficult to find an email for an artistic director because they deliberately don't want to give out email addresses because they already have enough emails.
Rufus Norris comes to mind, yes.
Yeah, well, if you go to the membership part of the website where it's asking for donations, 99% of the time, there's always the name of the person that will gratefully receive your donations. And then, it doesn't take a clever clogs to work out what you need to do to make to get that email to the right person. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
Very clever.
That's the second time I've digressed. Welcome to my life. So we have something online. It's a portal called Submittable. And essentially, all that we ask for is 2 songs, a very short synopsis paragraph about what the show is, what happens, and a short synopsis paragraph about who you are, how long you've been writing, what it is you need from the other palace. Then every couple of months, we will have a listening day where we listen to everything. And we will then reply to everybody with a view to, we might say, this is great, but it's not quite for us. Or this is great, we think you need to find a book writer. And these are people we might suggest. This is great, we can't give you money, but we can give you space. Or the dream, which is, this is great, we'd like to produce a workshop of it, come and have 2 weeks. It's very rare that I think we're going to listen to anything and go, this is ready for the main house, we're going to find money to produce it, let's go. Because as I said, Andrew and the other palace is much more interested in the kind of seed stage of ideas as opposed to producing big shows. He doesn't need to do that anymore. They're a really useful group have had that. And now I think Andrew's vision for buying the venue was almost his opportunity to give back to the industry that's been so positive to him and brilliant to his life.
And what about if you're a creative, say? Imagine you're an emerging choreographer or a re-emerging choreographer, come to mention it. How can a creative get involved and have a meeting and be considered perhaps for working on these projects? Yeah,
it is tricky. There's no beating around the bush. And I would love to spend all my days doing coffees with people. The reality is, I don't always have the opportunities for everybody that I'd love to meet, and B, I find actually this sounds terribly entitled, and it's not meant to be, but I'm at a point in my career where it's, you have creatives that you work with, you work well with them, so it's very difficult for someone to penetrate into that group. So with that in mind, I find that people coming to me with ideas for things is much better than just to meet someone and have a random coffee and think about what might happen. Because I meet so many wonderful people, if you've got something tangible, as in there's a physical idea, it's easier. But one other thing that I did at the other palace was I would have lots of emails from wonderful, incredible, creative people that wanted to just introduce themselves and talk about their work and talk about what they are up to. And so I realised after lots of these coffees that sometimes actually it's not me they need. It's the opportunity to meet fellow like-minded creative people. So I introduced something at the other palace, which is Creatives Connect. And the kind of shorthand for it, that I call it, is creative speed dating. So we have a complete mixture of people at different levels in their career, from people that have been leading artistic directors at regional theatres to people that have just graduated from Rose Bruford and kind of going into this gauntlet of theatre and don't know where to start, finding it really hard to get meetings. And it's around 50 people. We do it on a dark day at the other palace. So dark day, I mean there's no show on. So we take over the bar. We put some money behind the bar, make sure everyone has a drink. And then I kind of whiz around the bar being the Cilla Black of theatre and making sure, that A, I meet everybody, hear what they're up to. But B, if you've got a choreographer that actually has an idea and just needs a producer, then there's such a variety of people there that actually I introduce them. And so many projects have already come out of those nights. And it's made me realise actually it isn't me that people need. It's not that meeting with the artistic director. It's a forum and a safe forum in which people can meet other creatives, because it's quite lonely. And I remember, when I was starting out as a director and then I started producing, you don't really have the opportunity to meet other creative people. And it can feel like sometimes a competition, or that you're in your own, like you're in your own lane, and it's quite lonely.
And also the terrible thing, which you know as well as I do, there is so much bullshit out there. Like the amount of times that I've heard about really good, kind, decent people that I've been warned by an actor, oh, they're an absolute nightmare, or oh, they were this, they were that. And then you meet these people and they couldn't be further from that. But because they've got some kind of, I hate to use this term, but some kind of power in the industry because, you know, they're on one side of the desk rather than the performers, you build up these pictures of these monstrous individuals that are just hardworking storytellers that might have had an off day with that actor once in rehearsal.
Yeah, to be honest, I try not to get bogged. For me, all of that kind of stuff is just faff. And kind of like, you get to a point, I think it was about 5 years ago, where you've done, you know, you've painted enough sets yourself, you've drove around in a van at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to ditch the set that you don't know what to do with, and you suddenly didn't think of a skip to put it in, when you've literally produced, and I mean produced, and that's what I call producing. You know, I think we're in a climate at the moment when producing has a synergy to money, and for me it's a lot more than just finding money. It's on the ground producing. And I think anything that isn't directly supportive of the process, which is already hard enough in itself, it's just faff.
Yeah.
It's just not what, like, just leave it, you know. And that's why, you know, we have to remember it's a collaborative art, and some of my best ideas most of the time haven't been my ideas. They've been that I've been a bit of a magpie, and I've had the project, but then I've had the instinct to put a Drew McConey to choreograph it, who never thought he would ever choreograph a hip hop R&B musical because he'd come through the Matthew Bourne kind of ballet school of training, and Drew certainly was worried before we did In the Heights, you know, and it was those ideas and being open to collaboration and being open to trying new things that sometimes can be the most interesting, exciting ideas.
Well, what I'll do, all of the links to things like the Creatives Connect and the portal, etc., for the other palace, I'll put all of those details in the show notes. So if you are interested in coming along to Creatives Connect, I was desperate to go to the last one, but had, annoyingly, a meeting and wasn't able to make it, but I will always do my best to be there and support, because hell, I'd love to meet some nice new producers that want to do something marvelous.
Well, exactly, yeah.
And who knows who else I might bump into, maybe a future choreographer. I'm going to be talking to Paul all about his life and career, and we're also going to jump on our soapboxes and talk about the problems and the responsibilities that come with social media. But we're going to take a little break and a little word from this rather lovely chap.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
Now, we're going to be jumping on our soapboxes now, talking about an industry issue that grinds our gears. And actually, this is an issue that I waded in as well. You have recently just cast the wonderful Carrie Hope Fletcher in Heathers.
Yes.
And you announced you were doing Heathers, that you had Carrie, and obviously you mentioned the website Stumble.
Yeah.
Stumble. It's really cute. Makes me think of a hiccup.
Let's say hiccup.
Little hiccup that happened, that he couldn't sell any tickets. I was absolutely flabbergasted, where you, who just cares about putting on new work and supporting artists, new and old, and collaborating, the amount of bile that was thrown at you personally, at the other palace, and actually at Carrie. Now, Carrie, I've since seen on social media, can absolutely stand her ground.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say that I was particularly impressed by actually some quite leading figures in our business that really should know better. But I was on the outside looking in. What was it like receiving all of these tweets and these...
Oh, goodness. I have been asked a few times to talk about this, and I deliberately didn't, because I feel like actually I said a statement, and I never do a statement because it sounds terribly official. And also I take my job really, really seriously. And, you know, the obvious thing to do in these situations is to not engage. But I felt strongly that I needed to. It's not nice because, you know, as I said, I am a human being. And sometimes people see people in positions of authority, feel like perhaps they have an armory and perhaps they can take anything. And actually, I am normal. I'm not normal. My life is not very normal, but I think, I have feelings. And, you know, I'm not afraid of engaging in difficult conversations. I've made a career out of having to have difficult conversations with people. I do it on an hourly basis. Possibly every minute I'm having to have a difficult conversation, or I'm having to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. So, that's not really the part that I'm afraid of. I'm more than happy to be asked difficult things and to explain why, because 99% of the time there's a reason for one's madness. However, I draw a line that because of the position I'm in, that I have to engage in conversations on Twitter. It's not appropriate, and neither is it appropriate to tag me or an artist. And, those conversations are okay to happen. I think, if someone really wants to complain about something on Twitter, then, that's their social media platform, and it's up to them how they want to be seen to the world at large. But when you tag someone in it, they have to see that. And my point was, sometimes it's not healthy for me actually to see that, because actually my priority is running a strong and a venue that's willing to take risks and make shows as good as they can be, and to work with classy and talented artists. And actually anything that's not in support of that or helping that, it's probably not helpful for me to see it. No. That doesn't mean the conversation can't happen, but I don't know why I would have to be tagged in that. And when it comes to an artist getting a role, that artist has got that role on talent, merit, and audition, like anyone would normally do. And to tag an artist in negativity of any sort, maybe this says more about me, but I just can't get my head around that. And I just don't think it's fair. And for anyone that's worked with me knows that, I really like to protect the people I work with, because it is a mini family. Sometimes you're with these people for years. And I just felt that I had to say something. And I think Twitter and Instagram and Facebook can be so helpful. And I think in recent years, we've seen the power of social media and how brilliant that can be for theatre in terms of spreading messages, in terms of, using it as a marketing tool to promote shows and to get bums on seats, which is wonderful. But I still think we all have a responsibility to each other in positive and respectful use of our social media platforms. And I go and see shows. I have thoughts about certain actors in roles like everybody else does. I would never share that. I put that in a WhatsApp group to my best mate. I would not do that on social media, because it's not helpful and it's not positive. And Friday, when we announced Heathers 2 weeks ago, should have been a day about celebrating the fact that it broke every box office record and that it was wonderful. And it wasn't. It became something else. And, all of the things that people were talking about, i.e. the casting of certain roles, the ticket price, there's a reason for everything,
The ticket price is very interesting because
Go on.
One of my favourite things about it is, what I love about the Other Palace is similar to what most theatres are doing. There are some that could really learn, but offering banded ticket types. So that, say, my little sister Dawn, for example, who is an NHS nurse, could afford to go to the theatre for the first time by getting a ticket for 25 quid or whatever it is, and going to see a brand new piece of musical theatre in London. Amazing. But myself, say, you might be putting on a Howard Goodall or whatever, and I can get a top price ticket, support a brand new venue, 75 quid, deals with the Fat Piglet, which literally is my favourite restaurant.
The other naughty piglet.
Sorry.
Oh, I quite like the Fat Piglet.
I always call it the Fat Pig. But I like the fact that if I want to spend 75 quid to support, an artistic director that I like, a theatre that I like, and everything that's behind it, I can also do that with all the perks that come with it. But you were being attacked for the fact that loads of people had bought cheap tickets who may not necessarily have booked tickets to see anything in that venue before, and they could afford to.
So I think you've just hit the nail on the head. The biggest problem was, how do I say this simply? We have 300 seats. Heathers is a massive show. Before we even start talking about the way the set is going to look, or the creative team that we work on it just on a purely personnel basis, i.e., the amount of people in the cast and the amount of people in the band. Before we start dealing with costumes, pyrotechnics, anything else, the show is big. It's really, really big. And for anyone that knows how much people are paid will know that they could do the sums on the back of a fag packet and work out that actually, wow, this is a big show for 300 seats. Now, the reason why I get really frustrated, and this isn't kind of necessarily anyone's business for me to share, but I'll just share it because it's what goes on in my mind, is that producers, 95% of the time, certainly any producer I know, will have spent hours and hours and sometimes days in marketing meetings trying to make sure that price bands, marketing campaigns, pricing, etc., is achievable both from an audience point of view and from a show's financial recoupment point of view. And like every other show I've ever worked on, we went through that exercise where we tried to make sure that the show was accessible. Now, what happened is we acknowledged that our audience for Heathers and for Carrie Hope Fletcher was probably going to be a younger audience. So I felt really, really passionate that there should be seats available from £21. There should be seats for £25. There should be seats for £35. So we made sure that there was hundreds of seats available at those prices. Now, what happened on the Friday was, of course, because of the amount of people trying to buy tickets, they sold out. They sold out very quickly. So as such, when one went to the website, they could only see £55 and £75. Now, I probably wouldn't go to the theatre and spend £75 because I can't afford that either. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. But those prices aren't there because we wanted to be cheeky and just try our luck. Those prices are there because they have to be there for the show to be able to make its money back.
Do you know what I think you should do after this? As an exercise, I don't know how good your box office is at capturing data. I would love to see how many people from those lower ticket bands are under 30 years old who have never booked I can probably find this out now. Because I bet there are people seeing that show who have never been to the other palace before, who are only booking because, oh my God, I can afford this. It works on the other way around.
And that's the problem. And what you want to say to people when they are firing abuse at you is, hold on, do you know how many hours I've spent trying to make sure that there were £21 seats and there were £25 seats? And so my point is, I get people's frustration. I completely get it because I'm the same, and I would find that really, really expensive, and I would have to think twice about whether I can afford to go and see it. And, I have a really lovely job. But it's just so frustrating when you know that you've spent that time to think about that, and then because the show has sold out that allocation of seats, they're not there. And really, that's why they're frustrated. It's not that they're £75. And the reality is, sometimes it's a business. We forget this,
Show business, people.
And, people will spend £75 on a seat if they can afford it. So from a producer's point of view, I hope no one curses me for saying this, but if people are buying them, then why wouldn't the producer put it on sale if it means that they get closer to making their money back? It's important that investors and producers make their money back because hopefully that will mean more people taking more risks in the future.
And it all feeds into the same pool. I think the thing you've got against you, I suppose, is your wonderful boss, Andrew Lloyd Webber. I suppose the problem is from a very two-dimensional first gut reaction, which is all you ever see on Twitter, is, hang on a sec, that's Andrew Lloyd Webber's theatre. He's got plenty of money. Why does he need to charge £75 tickets?
Yeah.
And yes, of course, he is a man of extraordinary wealth. But of course, it's not that personal. It's about what is the model that means that the theatre can sustain itself without having to go to Andrew and going, oh, can we have another this? Can we have another this? And making it self-sustaining. So I feel sorry for you.
This is where I get really frustrated. And I think, one day I'm going to write a book. Andrew's investment was really buying the building. He just spent millions of pounds buying a building in order to give back to the musical theatre community that's been so good to him. And also, the theatre isn't a charity. As I said, it's a theatre. And Andrew has a foundation that year in, year out support artists and schools and a huge array of different projects in their millions, every single year. So Andrew does his bit, in the same way that Cameron does, restoring the buildings and make sure he keeps his theatres top notch.
There's no one better than Cameron and Andrew when it comes to looking at just the art that is put in and the restructuring and the endless detail, like the gold leaf, for example. Any other cheap producer would go out with a model making gold and say no one will notice. Cameron and Andrew, it's still bloody gold leaf. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, and having being forward thinking about the buildings. Drury Lane is about to have a huge revamp at some point in the next few years, and it's really, really important to really useful theatres, and to Andrew and to Madeline, Andrew's wife, that they future-proof venues. You get backlash, or when you have people, I want to shout and scream about this, but ultimately you just go, is it worth it?
What do you do personally to monitor your own social media activity, and what would you like to see others doing? Because, and I ask this question because the thing I can't get my head around, and I'm a, still relatively young gay guy. I like an attractive guy just as much as the next one, but I can't get my head around things like Instagram, where I'll check my Instagram post and there is basically naked actors on my phone. And I'm like, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But you wouldn't see, Cheetah Rivera going out of her way, showing off, her tits. Like, just a bit of decorum, just a little bit of like...
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm really lucky that because I have lots of friends that are in the public eye, and, and we talk at length about protecting yourself, your sanity, and just well-being. And, a rule that was given to me was don't explain and don't complain when it comes to Twitter. Don't ever explain yourself because you don't need to, and don't complain about other people. And I think we all have to see ourselves as a brand. So with that in mind, if you have photos of yourself, I enjoy going out. I'm a 30-year-old man. I enjoy partying. I love seeing the boys and having a good Saturday night where we have a little tipple.
Or 80.
But
climbing out of the gutter.
There is a conversation where I say, where I've had to have with mates and stuff. It's probably not appropriate for someone in my position to have a picture of me in the gutter somewhere in Soho, you know. And neither has that ever happened, Andrew, I should say.
Yeah.
But but it's just not appropriate. And actually the reason why those memories for me and those times are so precious is because those are my moments with my mates, And actually you have to think about yourself in terms of a brand and in terms of a figurehead of an organization, and know what is appropriate to post and what isn't. And I think that's the same for actors. If that's the way that you want to be seen to the outside world, go ahead, and that's your prerogative, and I'm fine with that. But if you want to be taken as a serious actor, dancer, then
just a reliable. Just someone who's reliable. I mean, like, everyone goes for a drink, but it does amaze me though when I will pick up my phone and there will be somebody essentially showing either naked pictures or they will have a show the next day and you'll see pictures of them trashed or videos. Like, I just wonder, do you really think the company managers aren't following this, or directors and producers? And there's I don't have any problem with it. Like, I have had plenty of a debauched night out. I will almost certainly have one tonight. But on the same hand, I'm also, it's never going to affect my work. You're never going to find me up until all hours knowing that I've got a 9 o'clock in the morning rehearsal or something or another. So why do I need that recorded so that whenever somebody does go, oh, who is this Andrew Keates? Can he direct this children's musical?
Of course.
Oh, here's a picture of him upside down in the Grouch show. Like, what's the point?
It's just about being responsible, I think. And I think
and savvy.
And savvy. And I think you actually, those memories are you and your mates. And, and I think just be responsible. Just make sure anything you're putting out, for my money, is positive. And if you've seen someone else's show and you enjoyed it, be positive about it.
Well, this is a rule I have. This is a rule that I do, which is if I go and see something and I've really enjoyed it, I will tweet. I will say, because I think it's really important, because there's so much shit out there. Actually, when I find something that has made me go, this is wonderful, I want everyone to go and see it.
Yeah.
But if I've seen something and it's for whatever reason, maybe I haven't liked it, or maybe I just, I could take it or leave it, and I won't tweet.
Yeah.
And I've had some mates say, oh, would you mind, doing a tweet because of whatever followers?
Yeah.
And I've gone, do you know what? I didn't feel the need to. And you do get that awkward feeling where it's like, oh, but I'm not going to put something out there that's not true. I'm not going to say, clamber on down to Minge the musical, it's fantastic, when I'm not a big fan of Minge.
I'd like to go and see that.
Minge the
Sounds
musical,
great.
shall we do it? Triumph. But like, if I don't like something, it's also my choice to
not say anything.
Say anything.
And I think that's fine. Listen, we don't want to get into a world where people are just being sycophantic about,
it's true.
About, where they're gushing about something if it's not. I think it's just being responsible and being, because the worst thing for me is when someone will put something into the social media ether, feeling like they have absolutely no responsibility. And then, of course, I'm going to remember what they said. Of course, when they email me and ask me for coffee, without being grand about it, why would I? Why would I then take that coffee and give that person my time?
Yeah.
And I genuinely think I speak a lot about theatre being collaboration, and it really is. And some of my best mistakes that have been successes in my career have been via collaboration. And that extends to my social media and how, there will be pictures of me being cute with my part-time dog. There will be silly, is it GIFs? I always get it wrong.
I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's GIFs. The geek in me is saying GIFs.
GIFs are toilet cleaner, I think. Let's go with GIF.
It's now SIF.
Okay.
It's now
all gone
SIF.
Pete Tong.
Yeah.
And because that's my sense of humour. I'm a bit silly. I'm really, hopefully, a bit fun, and I take my work seriously, but I certainly don't take myself too seriously. And, and I think it's just about being grown up about it and remembering that actually we have to support each other. It's hard enough. It's hard whether you are an actor graduating from drama school or whether you're an artistic director of Andrew Lloyd Webber's new theatre, That's the reality. We're in an industry which is hugely competitive. It's really hard to make ends meet. And we have to have that generosity of spirit to each other, because if we don't, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
Just on a human level, I think.
Well, listeners, what do you think? You can tweet the show at ShowPeopleUK using hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast, or join the Show People Podcast Listeners Forum at facebook.com/ShowPeoplePodcast. Give the page a like and join in the conversation, as if we don't talk about these things, well, how in the hell are you going to change them?
I'm Alistair Brammer, and you're listening to the Show People Podcast with Andrew Keates, a man with the hairdo of a children's TV presenter and the drinks cabinet of an elderly Broadway diva.
Let's start at the very beginning.
A very good place to start.
Thank you very much.
You were waiting for me then, weren't you?
Yeah, it's when people don't get it that it's a very long interval. So, Paul, where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was a baby Taylor Mills like?
Well, I was actually a baby Taylor, but my mom didn't get married to my dad, a little hussy. So I ended up we became Taylor Mills because my mum was Mills, my dad was Taylor. And it just sounded a bit posher, didn't it? But which was ironic because I actually had a really normal, humble raising, really. It was a single mum. She wasn't with dad. Me and my brother, we had a very normal life. We didn't want for anything, but, mum worked hard to make sure I went to dance classes, and I did loads of amateur dramatics in Kidderminster Operatic and Dramatic Society. We did Carousel, we did Half a Sixpence, West Side Story, all of them. And it was the best training in the world. Then I went to Bath Spa University and I did 3 years there. And it was wonderful because I got given budgets to make shows, which I don't think I would have ever have had if I went to a drama school. So I was really, really...
what were you studying there, Paul?
Performing arts.
It was specifically performing arts. And at that moment, were you thinking about being a performer, or were the early producer, director desires coming out even then?
I was an actor, but I was a bit... Cocky wasn't the right word. I just had too much to say. And a few of my lecturers would take me aside and they'd say, I think you might be a director. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice. I get to tell people what to do. So I got given, at that point, £10,000, which was amazing, to do productions. I did Godspell, then I did West Side Story. And I was always, I was hugely ambitious. So I'd go to like the dance department to get the dancers. I'd go to the music department to find the orchestra. And then I'd do stuff at the university theatre, but then I wasn't quite happy the university theatre was big enough for me. So then I'd take over a 2,000 seat theatre, old cinema in the centre of Bath and do West Side Story there. And, you know, I'd drive around Bath city centre in a 1950s fire engine promoting the show. And I was so much more audacious then than I am now. Now I'm so worried before I do anything.
Yeah.
But then I was just like, yeah, do it. And then graduated, and I was really lucky. I assisted lots of wonderful directors. And then slowly, you know what it's like, trying to get your own work on is really, really hard. So to make it happen, you end up producing it yourself and taking out credit cards and doing what you can to just make it work. And then slowly over time started to realize that perhaps I was better at making sure the right people were around the table as opposed to being in a rehearsal environment. And that's what led to producing. And I guess I started to learn that I was, as I said, better at making sure the right people were at the party than I was being in the rehearsal room.
Do you ever miss being a performer? Do you ever sometimes watch a great big 11 o'clock number and think, oh, I long for the days?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I have the hugest amount of respect for actors. I adore them, and I think you have to be a producer. But I think actors are some of the most resilient people we have in the world. And I'm constantly surprised and fascinated by what actors can do. I just don't have that kind of bone in my body where I can perhaps be told what to do, or the unpredictability of it. I just couldn't do that. It's just not for me.
What's your first memory of the theatre? What's that early hazy memory of when you first thought, I really want to be involved in this in some way or another?
I guess it was watching amateur dramatics. You know, normally two memories are watching a pantomime or being pulled over to an amateur dramatic society. I remember my mum did a lady called Jackie's hair, and my mum, you know, for Mothering Sunday, me and my brother used to do Spice Girls impersonations in the living room, and I'd force my younger brother to do it with me. And so my mum got an inkling that perhaps I wanted to perform, or at least I wanted to be in theatre. My mum was doing Jackie's hair, and Jackie was a member of Kidderminster Operatic and Dramatic Society. That's a mouthful. And I think she said, we've got a youth section, send Paul along. And that's really how it started. And
Thank God for Jackie.
Thank God for Jackie. And that's really how it all started. And the rest, they say, is history.
And you were very, very fortunate later to be awarded things like the Stage 1 bursary, which is, of course, a huge honour. But those early things you were doing, like parading around in a fire engine, producing, marketing West Side Story, you really cut your teeth in London on the Fringe, working very closely with things like the Union Theatre, for example. Again, we can talk about things that we have in common here, but how did you start? How did you first get that cash together for those early shows, and what were they?
Gosh, it was really hard. And, you know, as you and I have spoken about before, now I worry for a young producer, because if I was starting out now in the current climate of the Off West End, I don't think I'd be able to do what I did then.
No.
And that has pros and cons. I would teach, I would have a full-time job, and then of an evening I would do rehearsals, because that was the only way of me surviving. I would take out credit cards, and this is without paying anyone very much. You know, you're doing this just to get the show on. And I was really fortunate that I'd, gone to see lots of things at the Union Theatre, and I approached Sasha, who I genuinely believe is one of my guardian angels, and without her leap of faith in me and her generosity, I wouldn't be where I am now. And it started with the best little whorehouse in Texas, which
doesn't it always?
Oh, it always does. And I had the best time. It was an absolute hoot. I don't think anyone else liked it, but I had the best time. But you're doing the dreaded word profit share.
Which is a shame, really, because I bet if you and I really, really were to spend a good couple of hours explaining what those times were like.
Yeah.
For me, profit share is not a dreaded word. It's a wonderful collaboration of everyone doing the very best they can with a failing arts council.
And it was that principle. Everyone knew they were getting into it, and everyone was having to do 10 jobs to make it work. And that's, in most cases, that is everybody. That's not producers and directors, contrary to popular belief, taking a huge cut of it. That's everybody involved doing it because they believe in the project and want to further their career.
Well, somebody said to me the other day, I think it was Mark Shenton, said to me, yes, there is profit share, but there was no loss share.
No, exactly.
I mean, we could do it that way.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
we lose the 5, 10, 15 grand, shall we all share the loss?
Yeah. It's a very, very, and I'm asked about it a lot. I think it's a very, very complicated picture. And I respect Mark by not going to see shows unless they're professionally made, professionally paid. And I think that has, and good on him. At the same time, I worry because without big advocates and supporters like Mark in my earlier days, and like yourself, I'm not sure.
We would be no one, Paul.
No.
Let's just be really honest about it. We would have lost all of our money.
Yeah.
No critic would have come and seen us. And ultimately would have probably led to me, probably living the rest of my days out teaching at a stagecoach. You know, that's probably the reality.
Yeah. And I worry that perhaps people coming through the ranks now might not get a Mark Shenton review, and what that might, it's going to make it harder. That doesn't mean I think Mark's wrong. I think I'm hugely respectful of Mark, but I'm just, he was so supportive of you and I and all of those producers coming from Drew, when Drew started off at the union, hugely supportive of new artists and new work. And I think the only way it's really, really going to get sorted is transparency, and is actually an industry body like Equity or SALT or someone coming up with something that works in a way to support projects happening and making sure that everyone gets paid fairly. The problem is our ticket price is just so low, as we know. So,
But do you know what's funny? Your name, I remember the first time I heard your name.
Oh, no.
Your name first came about from Anthony Drew.
Oh, I love Anthony.
Who doesn't? Anthony Drew, the most gorgeous man in the business. And it was at a time where I was vehemently passionate about doing Just So.
Yes.
And I think I was with Anthony when it was the old Players Bar.
Right.
And he said, you must meet up with this young emerging producer, Paul Taylor Mills, who's just done an excellent production of Honk. And if memory serves, no, I didn't meet Anthony at Players. I think I met you in Players.
Yes, it's all coming back to me.
And I think we sat down and just sort of, even then, probably the same energy we've got now, just without the experience, just going, yeah, babe, just put it on.
Just do it.
Just do it.
And it's sad now that I don't think that can happen. I don't think you can just go, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully I'm in the position I am now because I was able to just do it. And when I say just do it, I don't mean just do it and do it in a way that's not fair for everybody. I meant just put it on and see what happens, And I feel for young producers these days because I don't think they can do it in the same way, because I think the climate's shifted.
I remember when I first heard that you were appointed as artistic director, of course, going back to what we were talking about earlier, there are the sort of whispers in the grass going, oh, Paul Taylor Mills has got that, why has he got that, da-da-da-da-da. And I always used to say, he's grafted. And what I adore is what one of your earliest survival jobs was, being on reception at Cameron's.
Yeah.
And I love the strap. Look, I have no disrespect to anybody that is a receptionist, but I just adore working in that wonderful building, sat there quietly watching all of those extraordinary people coming and going, to now having, a real diamond of a theatre like the Other Palace.
Yeah.
I don't know of a steeper trajectory to go from sort of one to the other in such a short amount of time.
Well, it doesn't feel short. It feels long. But I guess it's just like, it was so lovely about 2 years ago. It was the What's on Stage Awards, and Nick Allett, I think they were recognising Cameron, and Nick did a speech before Cameron came to accept his award, or it might have been for Les Mis, or it was an award anyway. And it was on the same night Emma Williams won an award for, I believe it was Half a Sixpence, and I won the award for, Last 5 years. I nearly forgot my own award.
All those awards.
Stop it. And Nick said something, there's 2 people tonight that have sat on that reception desk at Cameron Macintosh that have gone on to win awards. And like you said, it was wonderful because I got to see all of these people come through. And, when someone was off, I'd get to sit on their desk and like do their job for a day. And then you got to see how this machine worked. I mean, it's a very luxurious machine. I haven't been able to work in a producing house
with a
like
theatre
that.
with a marble staircase.
Yeah, exactly. But it's it was amazing. And the nice thing about it now is there's a lovely synergy to it because last October we did Manhattan Parisian, which is Alain Boublil's new musical. And, we're talking about other things we're doing. And it's so funny because we met years and years ago. Les Mis 25, I think it was, or 21. God, am I aging the musical? And, I've just tried to be nice. I've tried to not offend too many people. You're always going to have difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. Try and give people context as to why you're making certain decisions. And hopefully 90% of the time they'll understand why you've had to make that decision. Be as transparent as you can be. And supportive. I genuinely want shows to happen. I genuinely want good people to do well, and I want people to work.
I'm going to continue waxing lyrical with Paul Taylor-Mills all about his experiences in the theatre. But now it's time for me to get my tips out. That's right, here are my theatrical tips of things to spend your hard-earned cash on this June 2018. Heathers at the Other Palace. The Lawrence O'Keefe and Kevin Murphy musical adaptation of Heathers will receive a full production at the Other Palace, starring West End and YouTube sensation Carrie Hope Fletcher. Heathers, the musical, premiered off-Broadway in 2014 and is based on the 1988 film of the same name, which is about a group of 4 teenage girls, 3 of whom share the first name Heather, a high school in Ohio. Veronica, the 4th friend, has had enough and longs to return to her old life and geeky friends. As well as Carrie Hope Fletcher, the cast includes Charlotte Wakefield, Jamie Moscato, Sophie Isaacs and more. Plays at the Other Palace from the 9th of June to the 4th of August. Visit theotherpalace.com for more information and tickets. Lonely Planet at Trafalgar Studios 2. Lonely Planet focuses on the friendship between Jodie and Carl, their struggle coming to terms with their illness, their own mortality, and the stigma associated with AIDS. A strictly limited run, this wonderfully moving, funny and intimate play will transport you to 1980s America, where an unknown virus is quickly destroying the gay community. Plays at Traff 2 in the run-up to London's iconic Pride Parade from the 12th of June to the 7th of July. Visit atgtickets.com for more information and tickets. Plus, there are many special Q&A opportunities after. Steve First, in character at the Underbelly Festival. Former Show People podcast guest Steve First, also known for Little Britain, The Right Stuff, Matilda, Maid in Dagenham and Walk Like a Panther, will be presenting his one-man show, Steve First, in character, at the Belly Theatre as part of the Underbelly Festival 2018 for one night only. Steve First, in character, is a series of 5 different characters, including Waltzer owner Ernie Vaz, his latest viral internet sensation, the Mayor of Kentish Town, Dave Pike, former Hollywood stuntman, Dean, a committed American Christian with a penchant for swinging, and Queenie, an unexpected violent offender. Directed by yours truly, Steve First in character has sold out in all of its previous venues, including the Museum of Comedy, Tristan Bates Theatre, and Astor Theatre. Come along and meet me and Steve in person afterwards for a giggle and a gin or 2. It's a perfect date night. Plays for one night only on the 15th of June at the Belly Theatre, located at the Underbelly Festival South Bank. Visit underbellyfestival.com for more information and tickets.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatre Counts. We're a friendly team of accountants who work with clients in the entertainment industry, and it's our mission to make tax simple. We offer a no jargon, simple approach with no hidden fees. Here's my tax tip of the week. Knowing what expenses you can claim can be very confusing, and allowable costs vary depending on the type of work that you do. Quite often, people either claim too many expenses or too little. Costs such as agent's commission, travel, mobile phone bills, digs and food on tour are examples of allowable expenses. However, if you use something for business and personal use, such as your mobile phone, you can only claim a business proportion of this. For further examples, we've pinned a link to our blog post about expenses on our Twitter page. We're happy to help and answer any questions that you may have, and you can contact us via our website www.theatrecounts.co.uk, or you can follow us on Twitter @theatrecounts. If you're a new client to us and fancy a £50 discount off your first year's fee, just quote the Show People podcast.
So, looking at some of your earliest jobs, Paul, we've got. So, here's a fun one. You first started really with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at the Lost Theatre,
Yes.
the world's hardest theatre to find in the world.
I think it's really simple. I think they've actually changed the name now, haven't they, to the Stockwell Playhouse.
Is that what the Stockwell Playhouse is?
Yes.
I wonder where the fuck that was. It's now the Stockwell Playhouse.
Yes.
But surely it should be the Vauxhall Playhouse, because it's definitely in Vauxhall.
Well, it's kind of in between, isn't it? Which I think was the problem. But it was run, I'm not sure if it still is, by a wonderful man called Mark.
Yeah.
Who was wonderful, hugely supportive. And I did a few things. I did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which remains one of my proudest achievements. I directed that and produced it.
Yeah.
And the other one was The Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Which I adore. Again, that's my taste all over. I'm always excited and interested in those. Yeah, or those things that are just slightly left of centre. You know, this is the producer that took the hip hop musical In the Heights, which everybody told me wouldn't work, to London. Carrie, the biggest flop of all time.
Yeah, I think even I said, all right. I think I even saw you and I went, I love you dearly, but Carrie?
I like a challenge. I love those. Sideshow, we're not
even going to talk about Sideshow, because I've not forgiven you. So listeners, when I did The Hired Man, I think you came along and I think we had some conversation at the time, which was, I wanted this one. Because it was at a time actually when all of these shows were not being done. It's sort of nuts now, because if you look back at the Joseph Weinberger catalogue, it's basically mine and your CV. But there was a time when these shows were really, really bloody hard to do, and they hadn't been done for 20 years.
Yeah.
Now I get an email every 6 months telling me that The Hired Man's being done somewhere. And I know you wanted The Hired Man, and I'd just done it. And Sideshow wasn't available. There was going to be the concert, I remember, the infamous concert that was meant to happen, and then you bloody got the rights. And it was sort of like, okay.
It wasn't easy, actually. They sometimes it's really quick, and then sometimes it takes you years. Heather's has been 5 years.
Yeah.
In the Heights, I think from getting the rights to going into rehearsal was about 3 months. So it varies completely. Yeah, it varies completely.
But people have a sort of strange ownership that because they sent an email, 2 years ago and said, oh, we're interested in doing it, and somebody said, oh, it's not available, that then when you actually put the production on 2 years later, they go, I was going to do that. No, you sent a bloody email. Calm down, love.
I never believe it until you're sat there with your glass of fizz on press night.
Yeah.
It's theatre, it's fluid, it changes all the time.
You've got, I'm just going through here. So a production which again, I'm sure a lot of people may have forgotten about, but was when I remember it being beautifully well received. Indeed, it was it was nominated for, I've got it here, nominated for What's on Stage Award for Best Off West End production, which was Steel Pier. Which is just one of my favourite musicals.
Beautiful, yeah. That was again at the Union, and it was Candor and Ebb, and I thought they were going to tell me to clear off when I asked to do it, and they didn't. I think it's a problem show, I won't give away any secrets, but there's a dramatic device in it, which we've seen a few times in musicals, used successfully and not successfully. And I think it really works in Steel Pier, but I'm not sure everyone agrees. And I just think the music is some of the best music, and it's a dance musical, and Richard Jones did some of the most exceptional choreography in this small old Union Theatre with 4 poles in the middle of the room. And, those were the times where you could have a cast of 16 at the Union Theatre, and it was so precious to have that kind of level of artists and actors up that close.
And what were you doing at, with these early productions? Because you would obviously then go on to do Bear, and Bear's sort of wonderful because you would do it and then it would disappear and then it came back, and it's sort of, you've had quite a long relationship with not only producing that show, but developing it as well. What were you doing though, other than credit cards and things, as you started to become more and more established?
Yeah.
Were you attracting investors? Were you just putting your own money into it?
No.
How were you getting these things one after the other off the ground?
At the Union, it was me. It was literally me. And like you said, everyone thinks you're like going home into your bath of gold. You're not. You're working every hour God sends to be able to have a job that pays the bills, and at the same time hoping that someone will give you another credit card to be able to go to Primark and get the cast costumes,
Yeah.
The amount of times that I would go with a costume designer to Primark, filling up baskets with white pumps and white vests for the cast is, I should have shares in the place. And no one sees that side of it, And as I've said to you, I think the use of the word profit is possibly the most damaging thing, because profit suggests that there is going to be some, and there normally isn't, and a sellout at the Union, as it was, which was like 52 seats, is very different to a sellout at the Palladium. But yeah, I was working, I was teaching, I was trying to make sure that my muggle job was in theatre in some way, so that I didn't lose my mind. Even if I was being an usher, or like I said, on the reception of Cameron Mackintosh, I felt like I was involved, as opposed to being in a call centre, or being working at Top Man, or there's no problems with that. But for me, I just don't think I'd have enjoyed it.
No. Well, because it's just a constant reminder of the life that we've all tried to avoid in some respect. Because I won't go through every show, some other beautiful things in here. You did Rent at the Greenwich Playhouse. You also did Stars and Drew's Three Little Pigs. But what is quite interesting is you also did, and I suppose this is when you were becoming more and more established, the UK tour of the rise and fall of Little Voice. So was that sort of a producer finally coming in and taking you under the arm, or was that you going, let me help? What was that?
Well, it was a weird one, actually. I left Cameron Mackintosh and I joined a company called Giddy Ox, they'd spent time touring a mixture of new writing, and they'd done Jonathan Harvey's A Beautiful Thing. I was going to say The Beautiful Game. That's something completely different.
Which you would also later do.
Yes. That's how I met Andrew, actually. And I joined a lovely man called Giuliano, and I essentially became the associate producer, and we tour booked it, we cast it, we did all the negotiations with the creatives, we did everything, and it was the kind of best training for me in the world, and I spent 2 years with him. Then the tour happened, and we had Beverly Callard, Ray Quinn, Joe McGann, and it was a wonderful production. Jim Cartwright actually directed it himself. It didn't quite do the box office that we'd had anticipated, and so it was a really good exercise for me to see what happens when things don't do as you anticipate they're going to, and what you need to do to work, what you need to do on the show to try and get it to the end.
Yeah.
Which, I'm quite open. I've had huge hits and huge flops, and I did my own production of End of the Rainbow. And it's actually through doing things like End of the Rainbow, where I couldn't give tickets away in some venues, that really teach you how to be a producer. It's the shows that I've done, such as Bat Boy and End of the Rainbow and Casa Valentina, that artistically could be my most proudest achievements. But I feel like you really earn your stripes when you've had a show like that, where you are every hour of every day fighting for the show. And I've had huge successes and huings, I'm not going to call them mistakes, I don't think they are, because I think they've been hugely valuable and informative to the kind of producer I am now. But things that haven't worked, and I would never change it for the world.
And you mentioned The Beautiful Game, the infamous musical. So what did you do to update The Beautiful Game, and how does one build a relationship with, let's be honest, one of the world's most famous musical theatre composers that's ever lived?
It was kind of a mistake, if I'm honest. And this is why I said, like, most of the opportunities that have come my way have been mistakes, which is why there's no rhyme or reason to whether a show is going to do well or not, which is why you can't overthink a certain thing is going to, like, I was actually helping out a friend. She's an actress who was having a really hard time and wanted people to take her seriously. And we were going through titles, and we came across The Beautiful Game. It had been a while since it had been in London. And I approached the Really Useful Group, and I said, listen, I'm a very small fry producer. I'm doing things at the Union. Would love to do this. I approached Lottie Wakeham, and she was up for it. Tim Jackson to choreograph it. And just put really classy, nice people around the show. Approached Neve Perry, who said, yes, I'd love to be in it. We did it. And then suddenly this tiny show at the Union has got the interest of everybody. So Andrew Lloyd Webber, Bill Kenwright.
Were you actively approaching these people, or were the emails coming in? I mean, it just seems so...
I can't really remember. I think Bill was interested because it was a musical of Andrew's, and it was about football.
Yeah.
So that kind of happened. And then Andrew, I think Andrew's got a soft spot for the show. So of course I was going to come and see it. And then, someone at the Really Useful group must have said, you know what, it's really good. And then from that, really, Andrew and I would meet for lunch every now and then, and we would talk.
What was that like, though? You must have been quivering a little bit.
I don't really get like that, and that's not me being polite. Like, we're all human, and
Totally, and I don't get it with, like you, we both hang out with very recognisable people from the telly and film and whatever. Any actor, I'm fine. I've met some of the world's most famous actors and had dinner and had a lovely time. But when it's a writer, there's something, maybe that's just my director's
Do you know what?
side.
I've never, ever had it. There's only one person in the world that I've ever actually not been able to talk when I met her.
Who was it?
It was Jennifer Hudson. It was the gay man in me. I literally could not get my shit together and could not talk. And she was she was so gracious. And it was after The Colour Purple on Broadway. I went backstage to meet her, and she's the only person I've ever met where I've actually not been able to speak. And Andrew is wonderful and is utterly charming. And we would have lunch and we would talk about the current climate of musicals. At that point, we'd talk about School of Rock, which he was writing. And then we decided to, I guess, formalise our lunches or meetings. And he asked me if I'd be interested in being an advisory producer, which essentially meant that whenever he was interested, I'd give my opinion, whether he wanted it or not. And then the St. James, as it was, became up for sale. And Andrew bought it. And then I kind of came on board doing the advisory producer thing. And then a few months later, I was asked if I'd like to be the artistic director. And I guess I was terrified then, as I am now, about it. And it's been wonderful. And like any jobs, has its ups and its downs. And, there is no guidebook for running a theatre. And there's certainly no guidebook for running a theatre for Andrew Lloyd Webber. But I have to say, it's a position that I take really seriously and I'm very grateful for. And I just want to make sure that I do my bit to support artists that are coming through the ranks and shows that are coming through the ranks, and do as much as I can to move the genre forward.
Hi, this is David Bedella, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
Thank you, David Bedella.
Love David Bedella.
Who doesn't? Well, the reason I chose a certain Mr. Bedella is, for those who know the show I'm about to talk about, In the Heights. One of the most joyous evenings I've ever spent in the theatre, and that wasn't just down to Eve Policarpou. In the Heights was huge in London, but I'm very much aware that we have listeners all over the world that may not necessarily know the musical, but they will certainly know its composer.
Yeah.
Tell us about In the Heights and what it's about.
In the Heights. So I always compare In the Heights. I always say if Beyonce and Lynn will kill me for saying this, but if Beyonce and Nando's were to write a musical, it would sound a bit like that mixed with a bit of EastEnders. And the reason I came up with that is because my mum is not a theatre person at all.
Me neither, no.
So I had to have a shorthand way of describing what happens. And I think there's influences from, there's a bit of West Side Story in there, there's a bit of Fiddler on the Roof in there, there's kind of a bit of everything. And as I'm sure everyone knows, it was kind of Lin-Manuel Miranda's earlier show, before Hamilton was Hamilton and before Lin.
That's right, people, there are other musicals than Hamilton. There are other musicals. But what was it that attracted you to it? Did somebody bring you the show and pitched it to you to produce?
No.
Or did you discover it and started?
Do you know what? It was, again, there's a kind of running theme throughout this interview. It was a mistake. It was an absolute mistake.
Wrong shuffle on Spotify? Or?
No, I was sat with the dear Bert Fink at the Ivy. I don't always go to the Ivy. It was the one time they let me in.
He goes to GAY as well.
I was sat with Bert Fink at the Ivy, and I'd found myself in a situation, the producer won't be named, but one of the most famous living producers in the world, who might have had a title that I might have wanted to do, and they might have said yes, and then suddenly got cold feet and said, no, you can't do it now. Said that I couldn't do this show that Luke Shepherd and I were wanting to do. And I'd already been in a situation with Southwark Playhouse where I'd let them down 3 times with different shows that were meant to happen then didn't. And I just was like, I can't let them down again. I just can't do this. Like, this is the 3rd time. So I frantically was going through show catalogues, which I'm sure we've all been there. And I was having a coffee with Bert Fink, and Bert had just joined R&H. So we were looking through the R&H catalogue, and I'd loved In the Heights. I first came across it years and years ago when I was touring America, and we had it on in the car and I was like, this genuinely at that point sounded like something completely different.
Yeah.
It was so fruity, and it was so exciting, and it was so luscious, and it moved me, you know. It was music that really penetrated your feelings. And I said to Bert, do you think we could get it? And he was like, well, I don't know, I can try. Who would you put on it? And at the time I was working as the producer at the Leicester Curve, and Drew had just done this really exciting new production of Chicago. And as I've already said, you know, I asked Drew, and Drew said no, and then I convinced him 3 times later that he should do it. And then he went on to win his Olivier for Best Choreographer. That was a nice moment. And we started to form a team around the show. And I happened to be going to New York, and Bert said, well, you should meet with Lynn and his dad. And Lynn was in workshops for this point for Hamilton over the road at the Public. So we met in this wonderful Mexican restaurant. And I just spent an hour over lunch just telling him what I'd not done and how inexperienced I was and how green I was, but that I really, really adored this show, and I really wanted to do it for the first time in London. And I guess they could see that I meant it, and I just wanted to make sure it was looked after. They said yes. At the same time, I heard from a producer called Tris Baker, who I adore and has been one of my many guardian angels. And Tris said, listen, I was going to bring the Broadway production over. It didn't quite work out. I know nothing about the Fringe. I'd be happy to do this with you. And I said, well, I know nothing about producing properly, so I'd love to do this with you too. And we struck this really, really beautiful marriage. And I adored everything about In the Heights. And as you say, you know, we looked at the box office the Thursday before we opened at Southwark Playhouse, and were really worried because at that time I wasn't raising money. I was still doing it on credit cards.
Yeah.
And then something happened on the Friday night preview show where Tris and I just looked at each other, and we were like, shit, I think this is a thing. And something ridiculous, like by the Saturday matinee interval, it had sold out. The whole run had sold out. And then, you know, I was suddenly this hot producer, and it really happened overnight. And it's a bit frustrating because it felt like it was overnight, but as you know, I'd put in years
tell me about it.
Painting my own set, going to TK Maxx and Primark buying costumes, but it just takes that one show which transformed things for me. And at that point, you know, I was doing Beautiful Game at the same time. And then, you know, 2 years later, In the Heights went on to run at the King's Cross, which made it Olivier eligible. And working with Tris meant that I was the show, and we could be recognised as Olivier contenders. And if I'm honest, I was just so excited that the show had been nominated for 4, and was, you know, excited to put on a posh suit and go to, at that point it was at the Royal Ballet. What do you call that? What's that called? I should know this.
The Royal Opera House.
Royal Opera House. I was going to say, it's not the, it's Royal Opera House. I was really excited about putting on a posh suit and just being invited.
Of which you are the king of fashion.
Oh, I love a posh suit.
But you know what? I have never in my life ever seen a photograph of you in the same outfit twice.
Well, you can't, dear, can you? Not when you're photographed.
I'm a director. All I do is wear plaid shirts and polo necks and the occasional nice denim.
When you have as many photos as I do on staircases, you have to have a variety.
More bloody photos of staircases than poor old Norman fucking Desmond. Yeah.
And we went along, and I'm not just saying this to appear humble, but we were up against the big boys.
Yeah, you were.
And then Outstanding Achievement in Music happened, and it was announced In the Heights, and Tris and I took to the stage. And, I couldn't believe my luck. I was there in a room full of my peers, people who I'd huge respect for. And there, there's Judi Dench, there's Imelda Staunton, there's Sonia Friedman, there's Cameron, there's Andrew, all these people. And I'm there giving a speech about this show that came out of my little head.
Yeah.
And then we were backstage, and we were in the press room, and we're talking, and I've gone bright red, don't really know what I'm saying. I genuinely feel like I'm in a dream. And a press rep comes over and grabs Tristan and I and says, you need to go back to the side of the stage. And I was like, why? And they said, you just need to come. So we left the interview, and I'm stood in the wings, and it was Best Choreographer, and Matthew Bourne's on stage. And the moment I got to the wings, they announced Drew McConey as best choreographer. And having told you the story about how I got Drew to do In the Heights, I just broke down
in tears.
I just absolutely broke down. And there's this photo that someone had taken of kind of Tristan holding me up in the wings.
Yeah.
And I had no idea anyone was taking a photo, but it was an absolute candid shot to see one of my best friends recognised for his wonderful work. After it being quite the journey to get him to do it, I think is a polite way of putting it, it was so wonderful. And then all three of us had to stay in the wings because, of course, the next one was Best Supporting Male in Musical.
So you would have been a puddle by this point.
And David Badella had won. And again, it was a really tough year. And I was on cloud nine. And, you know, it's cliche, but my life did change overnight. And it put me in a different, I guess, a different world. And I guess a world where people just expect more money from you.
But also another thing, because anybody knows that follows me and this show, I'm extremely passionate about BAME artists. And actually what was so wonderful about In the Heights is it wasn't a sympathy production. You know, it wasn't, you know, oh, let's tell this turgid old story. You found some of the finest actors that are non-white who could act, sing, dance, different ages, different abilities. And it was just this sexy stew of amazing real people who happened to be telling this remarkable story with Drew's beautiful choreography and Luke's excellent direction.
I think that's credit to our casting director, Will Burton.
Who I know is a great friend, of course, as well.
He's a dear friend, and we've had a long, long relationship. And in the earlier days when I was doing The Bears and the earlier productions, The Beautiful Game, it was really Will's instinct for casting and his class. And he's one of the best out there, you know. And he was able to make sure that the makeup of the cast on In the Heights was so, so, so wonderful. You know, when you're doing a show at Southwark Playhouse and everyone's getting a travel card per week, to get the people that we got was testament to Will and his incredible taste. And we were hugely lucky.
Now, I'm going to change the tone from that extraordinary success and you know, and the endless successes that would go ahead, because with the Show People podcast, we all have to go through our shit before we get to, you know, the great things that we go on to do. I understand that there were 2 shows that were done at Southwark, Casa Valentina and Bat Boy, a show which I adore. I just had John Barr on this and we spent about an hour talking about how great it was.
Bat Boy.
2 brilliant shows, two that I without doubt would have loved to have done. But you're very, very frank and candid about the fact that you had to liquidate a company, which I suppose at the time must have felt, because of how public everything is and the way we are, must have been pretty crippling.
Yeah.
How do you drag yourself from liquidated company to collecting an award at the Oliviers?
And I think it was within a week of each other, actually. And I think the fact that it was within a week of each other, of collecting an Olivier on behalf of Lin-Manuel for In the Heights, and also having a very public, almost shaming from a certain newspaper about having to liquidate a company, is hard. But also, that is the reality of being a producer. You know, it's brilliant and it's shit and it's everything in between. And the same week I was having to, you know, think about how to get End of the Rainbow to the end of its tour. And that's the reality of what it is like to be a producer. And there's highs, there's lows. And the reason I am candid about it and I want to talk about it is because I want to try and educate, and I don't want any other younger producers to probably go through what I went through. And you know, it was taken out of context a little bit because Bat Boy was a show where I decided to approach equity with a view to trying to pay people fairer. And, you know, we did this special equity contract. And it wasn't because we paid actors that it didn't work. It was because we didn't sell enough tickets and I didn't have enough of a reserve, you know.
Do you know that the funny thing is, because you probably have it, there are so many young producers and young directors and people with theatre companies that often want to come up and ask me, Andrew, what do I do here?
Yeah.
And I often say, you're forgetting that, and again, it's why both of our timelines are exactly the same. It was just going with gut instinct. There is so much I know nothing about, but because people see the awards or the, you know, the nice photographs or whatever that is out there of us when we were really young and go-getting and probably quite foolish, people assume that we know it all. And I'm learning still every day.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like such a fraud when I'm asked to talk on a panel and things like that.
I learn every day, and I think hopefully you should be allowed to make mistakes as long as you only make them once.
Yeah.
And, the very DNA of a producer...
That's such a good phrase. You're allowed to make mistakes, just only make them once.
Yeah, and I mean, I've made it twice. Let's not go into that. But I think, the very DNA of a producer is that you take risks. And, I am that producer, and I take risks on the work. I like to take risks on the artists so that we can move the genre forward and continue to create exciting work. Now, would I do things differently years ago? Of course I would. But it was an odd time because, people want to go at you. And again, we've already spoke about this today. You want to justify everything and you want to explain everything. But actually, you don't need to. You shouldn't need to. You do your best that you can do. Try and be as fair as you can be. And try and do as much of it with as much integrity as you can do.
And be kind. Just be kind,
It will always come back to you. Whether you are at the bottom of the pile or the top of the pile, be kind. Always, always. And if you can't be kind, just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
It is sometimes okay.
Hi, this is John Barr, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
It's time for the Show People podcast platform, the part of the show where we like to give some well-earned exposure to new work by new writers, composers, and other artists. And today's platform is given to Tim Dreesen and his new superhero musical, Just a Normal Girl, which was previously called Super Alice Smith. Just a Normal Girl is the story of Catherine, an English girl with superpowers she can't control, and which her parents would prefer her not to have. Due to a family tragedy, customary for superhero tales, her uncontained powers killing her parents, she is forced to move to an American metropolis, Gold Gate City, to attend Hero High, where she can learn how to control and hone her special powers. But not long after she moves to this city, which is proud of its 0% crime rates, crimes start to happen, and the superheroes who always kept the city safe are starting to lose their powers. Will it be up to Catherine to save the day and become the hero she's destined to be, or will she lose her superpowers and become just a normal girl? Tim Dreesen was born in Belgium and moved to the UK when he was 18 to train at Lane Theatre Arts. Since leaving college, he's been in numerous shows, most notably playing Frankie Valli in the Dutch production and first UK tour of Jersey Boys, Galileo in the Belgian production of We Will Rock You, Adrian Banks and Mark Owen in Never Forget at both the Savoy and the UK tour, alternate Drew and covers Stacey Jacks in Rock of Ages, and is currently Stand By Zazu, Timon and Pumbaa in the Dutch production of The Lion King. Other shows include Joseph, Mamma Mia, Starlight Express and That Boy. Tim says the reason he started writing is because he felt that new musicals that were being made and produced in the UK are too few and didn't represent the type of shows that he would pay top price to go and watch. So here is one of his own songs from Just a Normal Girl. It's called Evil Has Many Faces, and it's sung by Kelly Ann Gower.
I bet you were all thinking, who could the bad guy be? Some balding, evil, ugly crook, bet you never thought it looked like me. But I don't get offended when people stop and stare, for I use what I got, and what I got I lay bare. Sinned if it wouldn't have been for Eve. Moving on to Mata Hari, powerful men under her spell. Through her sly conspiring ways, many a government fell. Although she swore course it helps that every man wants to get me in his bed. And the looks are a bonus, they are no necessity. 'Cause if you pay me the right price, features enhanced easily. And when you're born unlucky, stuck in a place you don't belong, just 'cause you look like Chucky, people think you're bad and wrong. This is why I offer my services humbly, 'cause no one can deny you don't work favorably for me. Evil has many phrases. You can try but never guess our hiding places. We've made a lot of hiding traces. Evil sure as hell has many phrases. Evil has many phrases. You can find it in the smallest, darkest corridors, wide open spaces. I'll put you through your
Wonderful. If you would like to find out more about Tim Dreesen's work, just visit www.timdreesen.com and the old website for Just a Normal Girl with some more songs and videos at superalicesmith.com. Are you a writer, composer, or artist who creates original work? Well, we'd love to hear from you. Please send any recordings that you have with full permission to use on the show, along with some information about yourself and your work, to info@arian-productions.com, as we're passionate about supporting new work and sharing it with you lovely listeners.
Hello, this is Steve First, and you are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. A man so marvellous, he's putting bums on seats. Whether it be parakeets eating halal meats or premier athletes submitting VAT receipts. It's the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
It's time for my favourite things. Paul Taylor Mills, I'm going to strand you on tour in Whitley Bay. I need to know the things you need to survive. You have a copy of the Bible and the complete works of Shakespeare, which you can do with what you will. But I want to know, what would be your favourite album?
Oh, wow. It would. I can't believe I'm saying this, but
It's going to be Beyonce, isn't it? I can see it in your eyes.
For me, even better, it would be Hamilton. I know that's such an obvious thing to say.
You do. So I should have explained. You do get a musical and a play later.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can take those. So you can be a little bit more en vogue, of which I know you are the world's coolest gay.
Okay, I would do Amy Winehouse, Back to Black.
That is such a good choice.
Yeah.
That would be one of mine probably as well.
Yeah.
And what would be the film?
I'm a bit strange when it comes to films. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. Like, I like to be scared. So it would be something like Seven or American Beauty.
Oh, they're so different.
Very different.
I couldn't choose. Can I choose? No, I would do American Beauty. I would probably do American Beauty.
Okay.
That is okay. And the book.
And a book. This is really embarrassing, but
Hungry Caterpillar.
No, but it would probably be one of the Harry Potters.
No shame in that.
Like, it would probably be the first one, because that was the first book that I read that got me into reading, which I think is an
Prisoner of
incredible...
Azkaban is one of the finest books for young people and adults out there.
I think what J.K. Rowling has done to get young people reading is incredible. It's so important.
And not dissimilar to you. I mean, admittedly, she's a multi-millionaire, but also somebody who, when couldn't necessarily find the work, just created it. I love her story.
Yeah.
And what would be the play?
Oh, that's hard. That's really, really hard. My most favourite plays is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
I like things that make me feel and move me. I just think it's one of the best plays ever written.
I agree. Yeah.
I haven't ever seen a production of it other than my own. It's happening in Sheffield actually soon.
Do you want to see it though? I have an aversion to seeing other people doing, because we feel such ownership of these things. The amount of times I've been invited to see Bent or The Hired Man, and I've just gone,
hard, isn't it?
I don't know if I because of that family, because it's like my boys aren't up there or my girls aren't up there, and it was ours.
Yeah, it's hard. I know what you mean. You get possessive, don't you? And you remember a certain memory in a certain way.
Even down to smells or lighting states.
Yeah.
There are so many moments. And what would be the musical you say would be Hamilton?
Do you know what? If I was able to take a musical, I have to say I've got two favourite musicals and they are West Side Story and Miss Saigon.
West Side is our most common answer. I still think Sunday in the Park with George. I just really? Don't know anything better than it. I
just think Miss Saigon and West Side Story for me represent the perfect musical.
Yeah.
In terms of the musicality, in terms of the stakes of the story,
the epicness and the scale.
Of it. They genuinely feel timeless. Mm-hmm. Like genuinely, that's not just a kind of phrase that I'm throwing out. Like they feel West Side Story is as relevant now as it was 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah, well, if not more so, particularly in London at the moment with all the knife crime and gang culture that's happening.
Exactly.
I mean, it does tell the story in a way that actually the already educated, I think, understand, in a way that perhaps those gangs would not watch and go, wow, that's great. But God, I defy anyone. If you're not weeping at the end of West Side Story, you have no soul.
Each song is a song. Like, I know that's an obvious thing to say, but you get Dance at the Gym, and then you get Tonight, and then suddenly you've got Cool, and you're like, it just can't get any better. And then you get America, and it just, they don't write them like they used to.
No, I know, and but even individual lyrics, there's a place for us.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. And what would be your luxury item? Clean thoughts, please, Miss Mills.
Clean thoughts, always. Do you know what? It would be a bag of posh coffee.
Nice.
Yeah, as long as I've got coffee, I'd be okay. I don't want a bottle of wine. I don't want crap food. It would need to be a bag of posh coffee.
Any particular coffee that you're going to recommend to our listeners to seek out?
Monmouth, I have to say.
Oh.
I love a Monmouth coffee. Yeah, I can drink cheap wine, cheap food. I cannot drink cheap coffee.
Fine.
When I go to New York, it is impossible for me, and I spend most of my time trying to find a classy coffee place because, of course, they have what do they call it? It's like a pour over. It's essentially something that's been sat in that flask all day. And
the drip system.
The drip system.
Oh my God!
I just can't drink that. I just can't do it.
Oh no, not like a filter coffee.
Basically, a filter coffee, yeah. But everyone goes mad for filter coffee, in my experience in America, and I just can't do it.
Makes me really jittery, cheap. You know, when you have, like, in the old days, when you'd have, like, a pot on during rehearsal. Nah.
Yeah. No, I can't do it.
Well, we've covered everything you need for Whitley Bay. It is sadly nearly the end of the show. But now it is time for everyone's favourite part of the show. Funny 5 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
Paul Taylor Mills, I have assembled in front of me some of the most outrageous and ludicrous questions that I can possibly
Do I have to
together.
say jokes? Because I've just learned a really funny new one.
I mean, you can tell. I mean, you have to answer honestly because some are outrageous. But I would be depriving the audience unless you actually did have. Tell me your joke, Paul, because I need to hear it.
I've told about 20 people in the past 2 days this joke because it's really made me giggle, and it's not crude, and so I'm allowed to say it in any social situation.
Yes.
So I go into the £1 bakery.
Yeah.
And I say to the lady behind the till, how much is that ice finger? She goes, £1. I go, how much is that donut? She goes, £1. I'm already laughing at my own joke. This is why I can't execute jokes very well. I then say to the lady, how much is that cake? She says, £2. And I went, why is that £2? She said, that's Madeira cake.
Well, I'm not going to ask you what's the best joke you know in 25 minutes, but Paul Taylor Mills, do bear in mind you are allowed 3 passes.
Okay.
So use them wisely.
Oh no, are they naughty questions?
Some might be. Some might be. I wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I must ask this. Paul Taylor Mills, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Paul Taylor Mills, where is the strangest place you've ever had a wee?
The Union Theatre toilets. The old Union Theatre toilet.
The rankest place in the world. If someone narrated your life, who would it be?
Oh, Ian McKellen.
Ah, good choice. What is the most expensive thing you've ever bought?
My aftershave is very expensive.
What do you wear?
Santal Le Labo. I got hooked on it by Don Black. It was a present from him.
And now
I'm
all
hooked.
wages.
Yeah.
What are the best kind of pants?
I'm a boxer short kind of man.
Never.
Yeah,
I would.
know.
Nobody ever believes that.
I know. No, I actually am.
Well, like proper baggy old.
I don't like that feeling of feeling a bit suffocating.
Little class.
This is very intimate, isn't it?
Isn't it just? What's the lie about you that you've always wanted to clear up?
That I'm a big old queen.
Awkward
stares.
Awkward. What is your favourite season?
Summer.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses.
And the reason for that, Paul Taylor Mills?
Because they're smaller than me.
But 100 en masse.
Yeah, I could do that. I think I'm a size queen.
Yeah.
I'm all about height.
Paul Taylor Mills is a size queen. Do you have any desire to swim with sharks?
No.
What pizza would you order?
Pollo Picante, which is like chicken, peppers, pesto.
Who is your teenage crush?
Will Young.
Never.
Yeah.
As in,
Will Young, yeah.
if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be?
Panther.
Panther. Why panther?
Strong.
Strong,
fast.
Independent, black animal.
Yeah.
And if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
An Indian. Absolutely an Indian.
What kind of curry?
Korma. I'm really boring.
Me too.
Love a korma.
All of my mates are straight, and the looks you get when you go chicken korma and a keema naan.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sweet or savoury?
Sweet.
What is the strangest thing you've ever had in your mouth? You visibly nearly retched to death.
Yeah, I did. This was with the next partner. We went to Athens and went to this very strange restaurant where they basically used parts of the animal that you wouldn't traditionally use. And it was pig brain.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did they tell you beforehand?
Yeah, the whole kind of gimmick of the restaurant was that it was kind of this 5-star restaurant where it was really, really trendy and very overpriced. And we had pig brain. That was actually our last ever date.
Was it really?
But yeah, it was pig brain.
What is the best children's show ever made?
I think the Teletubbies.
Really?
Yeah.
Fucking weird. Have you seen In the Night Garden?
After like 5 minutes and then I switched off.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely terrifying. How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Fried.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
Who is the most beautiful person you've ever kissed?
My mum.
Your mum. Well, it wasn't going to be Andrew Lloyd Webber, let's be frank. Is line dancing cool?
Yeah.
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 Okay. What would your autobiography be called?
It's not the pain, it's the shock.
Ooh. An S&M guide by Paul Taylor Mills. What is the filthiest joke you know?
Oh my goodness. They're really, really filthy. No, I'll lose my job.
Is that a pass?
That's a pass.
What is your worst habit?
Trying to please people.
Oh yeah, I've got that one. Well, not too bad. Only one pass.
I love that. Very honest.
It is great fun.
My jokes are really, really filthy. Slightly sick. I just would be able to.
Sadly, that noise tells me that is the end of the show. But before we go, I'm going to squeeze in a few parish notices. Firstly, thank you to Tim Dreesen for sending in a song from Just a Normal Girl. Congratulations to everyone who made it into my June theatrical tips. But please, pre-recorded studio audience, go mad for the wonderful Mr. Paul Taylor Mills. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Darling, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to?
Twitter.
And what's Twitter? What do people follow?
So the Other Palace handle, which is at the Other Palace, or me, which is at Paul Taylor Mills, no hyphen.
Make sure you are following Paul and the Other Palace on Twitter, and remember his advice: don't explain and don't complain. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew Keates, follow the show at ShowPeopleUK, and use hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com, or you can also like the Show People page on Facebook at facebook.com/ShowPeoplePodcast. Question: do you love tea and coffee? Do you need to use a pen? Do you think you should support this free podcast? I think you should. Well, go to www.arian-productions.com/shop and you can get your jazz hands on some Show People podcast merch. All profits go towards supporting this free show and other Arian Productions projects too. If you're particularly generous and you have no room for mugs or pens, well, why not just make a donation at www.arian-productions.com/donate. Another little request. We would love you to vote for the Show People podcast in the Theatre and Technology Awards under Best Podcast. It takes 2 minutes to do. All you have to do is go to www.theatreandtechawards.com and anyone from the public can nominate for Best Podcast. Please do that, as it would be lovely to be recognised for all the hard work we do. Finally, this podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, if you've bought your shiny podcast mug and pen, if you've voted for us in the Theatre and Tech Awards, well, one last thing, don't forget to leave us an iTunes review. Until next time, Show People, just be better. Do you know what? I have never in my life ever seen a photograph of you in the same outfit twice.
Well, you can't, dear, can you? Not when you're photographed.
I'm a director. All I do is wear plaid shirts and polo necks and the occasional nice denim.
When you have as many photos as I do on staircases, you have to have a variety.
More bloody photos of staircases than poor old Norman fucking Desmond.